Okay, so yes, we're live, and then let's get straight to the class for today. So, introduction to Kotlin and Android Studio. Yes, so this is what we're going to be talking about this evening. Yeah, so what is Kotlin all about? What's Android Studio all about? Okay, so once again, my name is Ikechukwu Achom, and I'm going to be your trainer for the Android A beginner level. Okay, so let's move forward. Yeah, so what is Kotlin? Okay, what is Kotlin? I know some of us may be asking ourselves that question. Okay, what's Kotlin? I just saw Kotlin. I thought I was just coming to learn Android. So what's Kotlin all about? Okay, so let's delve into that. So Kotlin is a statically typed general purpose programming language that was developed by JetBrains. Okay, so I want to believe you know what program is. I want you to believe you know what programming is. And I also want to believe you know what programming language is. Of course, program is just a set of instructions. Okay, programming is the process. Okay, and then of course the language. Okay, of course, you're hearing me speak English, so we are able to communicate. If I'm to speak my native dialect, imagine me trying to explain Kotlin in my own native dialect. Of course, you would not be able to understand. So Kotlin is a programming language, but it is statically typed. And I'm going to explain what that means, okay, while we move forward. Okay, secondly is Kotlin is an object-oriented language. Okay, we'll also get to, talk about these things. So let's keep the definitions out of the way. Okay, it's an object-oriented language and a better language than Java. So for some of us who have knowledge of Java, and then you're switching to Kotlin. Okay, yes, Kotlin is better than Java. Yeah, that's a lot of arguments. People still, having to say a yes and say a no, but I'm going to leave that to those guys. Okay, I'm not in the business of making such arguments. Okay, but it is still fully interoperable with the Java code, and you get to see that once we start actually building some applications. Once you get into the Android Studio, yeah, you get to see some of these things that we're talking about. Okay, so let's look at some of the key features of Kotlin. Okay, now the first thing we said is that Kotlin is statically typed. Now, statically typed, it's a characteristics of a programming language, and it means that the type of variable of every variable and expression is known at compile time. Okay, so maybe some words you've not heard before or maybe confusing. So let me see if I can pick them one after the other. Okay, so we said statically typed. Okay, it's a characteristics of a language. So it means that the type of every variable and expression is known at compile time. Now, some of you may ask, what is a variable? Okay, this is it. A variable is just a memory location, or better put, I like to bring things home. A variable is just like a bucket where you store maybe water or something. So when we talk about type of a variable, it means that a variable being a container, there is a type of container, okay? And that means that the type of a container determines the what is going to be stored in that container. A typical example is it's not going to be very ideal for for you to store let's say what will I use? Let's say you get a let's see a pot. Okay, fine. So probably you actually, there are these pots they used to actually store water, from the olden days and stuff. So of course you wouldn't want to get a pot and then you actually store, something like stones inside or sand, especially if it was meant to, if it was bought for the purpose of storing water and then you're storing sand inside. Of course, that's actually you abusing such what buckets. Okay, so the variable being a storage location is just a bucket where you store things, so it has a type, and then we'll get to talk about this when we get into the Kotlin programming language proper. Okay, so another thing here, the compile time. So what's compile time? Okay, so compile time, okay, this is just the time at which your source code is converted into an executable code. So let me put it like this. Now, I speak English right now. For someone who speaks probably French, if I'm to write a letter to you, okay, in English, now definitely if that letter gets to you in English, you would actually not understand if all you understand is French. But I can have a situation whereby before it gets to you, it is actually, translated to French. And then you're only seeing the French version of what I said. So that whole process, that's like a compile time, trying to see if I can use something relatable for you to understand. So we get to know for Kotlin being statically typed, we get to know the type of a variable, the expression, we get to know it at the compile time. Okay, so although it is statically typed, okay, it does not require you to explicitly specify the type of every variable you're going to declare. Okay, so we'll get to really understand some of all these words we're saying when we talk about explicit declaration of variables and the likes. We'll get to understand that as we move on. Okay, so the next key feature about Kotlin is that with respect to data classes, now there are data classes which lead to auto generation of what we call boilerplates. Okay, like equals, hash codes to string getters and setters and much more. Now, I'll actually show you that briefly in a code. Okay, but for any of us who actually have some experience in Java, you know that when you actually, create classes, data classes, you have to, generate some, to strings, some getters and setters. But in Kotlin, you don't have to really do that. They are auto-generated. So I'm going to show you that in a moment. Now, another feature is that it is concise. It drastically reduces the extra code written in other object-oriented programming languages. Now, let me actually show you what we're talking about. Now, this is a Java code. This is a class, a book class, okay? So every book, of course, we'll talk about classes. Every book has a title. You have private string title, okay? The privates being the access modifier. String is the data type, and then title is the variable. So the type of variable, the type of memory location, the type of storage container, whatever the type, it takes the string. So that means the variable called title will only take string values, but we'll talk more about that. So just trying to see if I can break them down as I go on. So this is just to create a class. We create a class called book, and then we give it two properties. You have the title, you have the author, and then we now have to create what we call getters and setters to get the title, to set the title, to get the author, to set the author. But in Kotlin, you do not need to write all these things. All you just need is this data class book, and then you give it the two properties that you want. And it generates your getters and your setters. So that's why we say Kotlin is concise. It reduces the extra code that you have to write. It just reduces. So imagine the lines of code, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me just round this up to probably, let's say, 16 lines of code. And then as against Kotlin, just one line of code. So it is concise. And please, if you have a question, you can just raise your hand and I'll try as much as possible to do justice to your question. And then one other feature, last but not the least, is Kotlin is safe. Okay, it provides the safety from most annoying and irritating null pointer exceptions, okay, by supporting nullability as part of the system. So every variable in Kotlin is non-null by default. Okay, now, of course, just calm down. We will explain these concepts when we get into the programming language. Okay, but for this, I think I'm just going to take a question. How do I pronounce this? Omo, go ahead. It's your question.
Okay, so my question is...
Sorry, can you pronounce the name?
Omo.
Omo, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, all right, thank you. So if Kotlin is this simple with all of these benefits, why do people bother with Java or any other programming language?
Okay, that's actually very interesting. So this is how I'm going to answer the question. Apart from the fact that, of course, Java came out before Kotlin, okay? So if a Toyota Venza 2018 model is so amazing, why do people still drive probably the 2014 model or the 2015? Can you answer that?
Because they can't afford the 20 version.
Okay, so the thing is this. Okay, the thing is this. Like, if when you go online, there are um, a lot of resources that kind of tells you the differences, like the features. Okay, why Kotlin is actually better than Java. The truth is, there are people who still want to write Java codes, okay, and maybe for some reason they are used to it, or they feel, what, no, I just prefer this. Now I'm going to give you this example. Now there are ways you can build multi-platform applications, okay, probably using Flutter, okay, and then there's native applications. But just for preference sake, there are people who prefer to build native apps. I don't want to have one code base that has that I can just build and then you can deploy it on iOS and then on Play Store. No, I want to build Android separately. I want to build iOS separately. So now the thing why I really don't like to get into such arguments is because it's a personal thing. Okay, it's personal. People have their own views as to that. Okay, but the bottom line of this is Kotlin actually makes it a bit much more better, much more easier. Okay, but of course, Java, of course, is it outdates Kotlin. It's been there before Kotlin came up, so of course people may still have that preference. You know what? Let me just stick to Java. Okay, Kotlin is still still like a newbie, but it is not actually. So it's a preference thing, and then there are a lot of resources, but I do not really like to step into that line where people get to say, oh, Java is much more better. Kotlin is this. No, go for Java, go for Kotlin. So I kind of just, I'll just give you, okay, this is what Kotlin does, okay? And then this is what Java does. So you actually take your pick. But for the purpose of this training, we're actually going to be using Kotlin because if not for anything, Google actually, of course, Kotlin is kind of like the go-to right now. So that's actually just that. Does anybody else have a question before we move on? Okay, so in the absence of none, let's actually continue. Let's move on. So next, let's see, what do we have? Okay, some advantages of Kotlin. Okay. So let me just drop them out here. Number one, Kotlin is easy to learn. Secondly, Kotlin is multi-platform. Thirdly, it is much safer than Java. Fourthly, it allows using the Java frameworks, and libraries in your new Kotlin projects. Okay, so that we talked about interoperable, okay, with Java. So when we start building applications, of course, you see some Java codes there. So you can actually use Java frameworks, Java libraries in your own Kotlin projects. Okay, so that's one of the advantage of Kotlin. So it didn't just come and try to take out Java out of the picture. It's more like I would want to see it as a better version of what's an upgrade of Java called Kotlin. So maybe we can see it like that, and not have to have the whole arguments that's actually happening. Then lastly, Kotlin programming language, okay, including compiler, libraries, and all the tooling, is completely free and open source. Of course, it's available on GitHub. You can actually check that out, github.com/JetBrains/Kotlin. So it's free and it is open source. You do not have to pay to use the application. You don't have to pay to use the libraries, the tooling is completely free and it is open source. So that's the advantage of Kotlin. Okay, now what tool would we be using for this course? We're going to be using what we call the Android Studio. Okay, so I'm going to drop a link on the channel for you so you can download Android Studio for those who haven't actually downloaded it. And yeah, so we can actually get started in our next class. But so what's the Android Studio? Okay, so Android Studio, it's an IDE. And what's an IDE? An IDE is an integrated development environment. Okay, if that grammar is too big, just take it that ID is a place where you work. That's all. Okay, so it's with tools to help you build applications. Okay, that's just it. It's just a place where you work. Okay, but it's actually a much better place. Okay, so just look at an IDE. Generally speaking, look at an IDE like this. Okay, imagine you having back in the days when probably you had to wash. Okay, you had to get soap, get water. If you had, imagine you having probably 20 clothes to wash, and then your hand gets all soft and may end up, for some of us who keep nails, you may end up actually just injuring yourself. But then the whole concept of washing, you have the washing machine just to make things easier. So an IDE, it's an integrated development environment with tools to help you build your applications in a more faster way, in a more better way, concise and easier way. So these are the important features of Android Studio, important ones. It helps you check for errors in your code. Okay, helps you check for errors in your code as you type. So you're going to see when we actually get into building applications, you see some, when you type stuff, you see some on the red lines, just stuff like that, just to show you, hey, I think you're actually getting an error right here. What you're writing is not actually correct. So you think you need to actually revisit. You see the yellow lines, the warnings, you see the green check. Oh, wow, what you actually wrote is actually superb. Go ahead. So it helps you check for errors in your code as you type. It also gives code suggestions. Very, very interesting. It gives code suggestions. So sometimes you may not have to actually type out the whole thing. Yeah, and I used to actually tell my students, yeah, it's not everything you try to type out. Okay, because we'll get to that point where there's sometimes when you type, you see the suggestion, it's actually you'll be advised to actually just take that suggestion because you would have to import probably a library. Okay, so here we don't actually, in Android, you don't actually have to manually go and import your library. Just by calling the class or the method, it actually imports some of the libraries for you. So it gives code suggestions. And then another very interesting feature is the emulator. Okay, the emulator allows you to simulate your Android device. So if you're building an application, depends on the specification of your laptop, you can actually run an emulator. So you don't have to test it on your physical device. You can actually just create a virtual device, which is going to be an emulator, and then you test your application. So as you build, you test, you don't have to run it on your physical device. So that's actually Android Studio. Okay, like I said, I'm going to give you a link to actually download that. That's going to drop on the Slack channel. Yes, so let's do well to make sure we are on the beginner Android channel. Yes, so make sure you're on that channel so you can get more information as we go. Okay, so that's actually that. Thank you very much. This was meant to be an introductory class. So any questions? We're going to take questions and then we talk about something else and then we round up. Any questions? Okay, so Omo, I hope I pronounced
Yes,
that.
so you had yes, you did. You had mentioned something at the beginning of the class. You said you like to guide. Could you please give examples of where the Android skill could be used? Like, so what are like the career paths and things like that?
Okay, that's fine. So we'll talk about career paths. Now, being an Android developer, of course, you want to build mobile applications. Okay, you want to build mobile applications. So, of course, you could be an Android developer. So that's basically the career path for learning Android is actually being an Android developer. Okay, so that's basically that. So when you talk about skills, we're going to talk more. One of the things I'm going to do as we move on in this training, I'm not just going to be teaching you Android, how to build applications. Of course, that's also very important. But one of the additional things I want to do this year is to help you to become a good Android and developer. It's just not about the skill, okay? Of course, skill is very important. Skill can get you a job, but skill will not actually keep you in the job, okay? There are a lot of other things that you need to try as an Android developer, okay? So these are stuff I'm going to be bringing up as we go. I don't want to actually just pour them out on you. No, some of them are actually embedded in a task. That's actually how I do my. Some of the things you may need to learn, which are non-tech related, but it to actually shape your journey, shape you in the journey of being an Android developer. Some of them will be embedded in some of the tasks that I will give you. And trust me, I'm going to give you tasks. I'm going to drill you guys to make sure you come out, the best you can. So that's actually I hope that answers your question. Then generally speaking, I love to make sure, I decided that, of course, I do that when I actually have to mentor persons one-on-one, but for the purpose of KodeCamp 2.0 Android track, I would love to make sure that everyone who graduates from this track will have an application on Play Store. So, and I'm very serious about that. An application that is your own, not mine. I'm not going to build it. You're going to build it, okay? Of course, with everyone guiding each other, will help each other. And then each and every one of us, one of your goals, mark it down, should be that by the end of KodeCamp 2.0, you should have an application on Play Store. So if you have an idea, okay, of an application you want to build, please note it down. Of course, I'm going to create a thread on the Slack channel, drop the ideas, drop what you want to build, drop it, and then let's see how we can actually, tailor our training, our energy into you learning, and at the same time coming out with something very, very tangible. Now, what I would like to say regarding that is this: your idea must not be big, okay? Don't overwhelm yourself with having to. We want to build an application like Facebook. You want to build an application like YouTube. You want to build an application like Uber. No, start small. It could be a simple personalized notebook app. It could be a simple personalized music application. It could be anything, but it should be simple, but at least solve a problem in your life. That's the first start. Now, a typical example is, when I was playing around, I played around and I have a notebook application that I use. It's not Play Store, just for Misha, just personal, solving my own problem first. Okay. So you can come up with ideas. Okay. Now, why I said it should not be too huge. Okay. If it's too huge, well, we'll have to break it down into getting what we call an MVP, which is a minimum viable product. That we can actually just push out on Play Store for people to actually get to use, at least your friends and your family. And then you can actually, go bigger on it as your journey, grows. Okay. But something simple we can actually start with, it could be a learning application. You just put up resources for people to actually learn. Okay. So think about that. So two things I want to see on the Slack channel, on the workspace. We're going to talk about why you actually chose the Android application. I'm going to create a message, you reply on the thread. And then secondly, what is going to be that idea of yours? Okay, so I'm going to create it. I'm going to pin it on the channel so we can always revisit and remind ourselves and make plans for that. Okay, so any other question before we round up? Okay, so no other questions. So this was a brief one. Trust me, each class is actually for 2 hours. So the next one is definitely, we're going to use the full time because we're going to get into Kotlin and Android. We're going to get into the real deal. So this is just to prepare your mind, and then so we get to know what we are actually into. So in the absence of any question, I'm going to say thank you guys very much. I hope to see you on the workspace communicating. Please, interact with each other. Okay, let's work. Get to know each other. You guys are like, you guys are like family now. So build each other, and then let's make sure we come out as, better than we actually stepped into the workspace. So thank you guys very much, and do have a wonderful, wonderful night rest.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief.